Good day. Welcome back, everyone. This is the Generation Gap Bridging the Gap podcast. I'm your host, Roydell Jr., or the second, I should say. This is Roydell Sr. This is my dad, and we're back at it again. This is episode 4 of the Generation Gap. So you might see some changes from, the first couple three there. We had our update conversation. I said we're going to do some updates. It's been a little bit of time, but we're back at it. A lot of new things, but we'll actually save it. This time we'll jump straight into it. We'll get into one topic and we'll go with that topic and we'll see where that takes us. Hopefully, we're able to bridge those gaps. Today's conversation: how do you let your kids become their own person over time? So I'll say that one more time for the listeners. How do you let your kids become their own person over time? So one thing you might be thinking at this point is why this topic? What has brought this about? And one of the things that my dad and I, who has grown with me and shown me the ropes, there's this idea to make new mistakes, right? Walk in the shadow, and then eventually become your own person, and then move forward in the world with confidence. But still, at the end of the day, I'm still his son, no matter how old I get. No matter how much of a man I become and I have my own kids and move on to have my own family, that's still my dad. And at the end of the day, um, you know, I'm still his son. So how do you navigate those things? How do you go from at one stage protecting your kids from anything and everything to the point where you need to trust them? How do you go from wanting the best for them, and part of wanting the best for them is showing them the ropes, but at the same time, you know, where does that line get crossed where you're disrespecting a man versus your son? How do you reconcile those things? And similarly, from a son perspective, how do you claim your stake? How do you show your parents on one side you want them to be proud of you, and you want to show them that you're capable, but also not disrespect them and hear what they have to say? Because a lot of the times, if you have good parents in your life, um, a lot of the success that you have attained is with them on your team. It's with their guidance, whether you like it or not in the moment. This is one thing a lot of parents do understand. We will look to punish our kids when we're younger when they don't pick up something small. And it's not because of that small thing. It's not because they left something there. It's just because of those values, that level of discipline, what that would mean for them later down the line. So the question is, does that really change once they get a little bit older? So these are some of the ideas that we're going to talk about. Dad, I haven't brought you in yet. Just wanted to get the crowd. Hopefully, you take no offense to that. Just wanted to bring them on the into the table. So how are you doing today? What's going
Yeah,
on?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah,
Okay.
like working on a lot of different projects, but we're getting back to the podcast, so I'm trying to get back because I'm usually I don't like to be in front of a camera. Like it's weird. I'm still trying to get used to just talking, looking into a camera. So I'm trying to pretend that I'm actually looking at a person. So sometimes I'll be looking away and all that because I'm always down
Hmm.
looking like that at the laptop working.
Yeah. Well, hold your head
Yeah,
up.
but
Hold your head up.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah. So,
no,
so question, the question. Yeah. So I'm good. I'm good. Ready to go.
ready to go.
And I really like the topic. This topic, I think, is very, very important because I wrestle with that same topic. Sometime I will call you and I will say, um, look, it's none of my business because you're your own man, but I think you should look over here, right? Because we've been older people as a older person, you kind of seen a lot, and I think a lot of young people tend to think that most of what they're going through is absolutely new, and in a lot of cases, not all, but a lot of the cases, it's just the same thing in a new context,
Hmm.
right? And it might not be a over one to one overlap, but there is sufficient uh, information there that older person have seen before. So it's a very, very thin line if you're trying not to overstep your boundary as a parent.
Right. And that's the thing, right? Like, at what point does advice become pressure, right? And this is one of those things too where we spoke about it in an earlier episode where I said I feel like a child's responsibility is not to make their parents happy, it's to make them proud, right? And this is a thing that it's a very tough thing, especially when you have parents that have been there for you. You want to see them
Wait,
happy,
wait,
and
wait, wait, 1 second, 1 second. Let's unpack that because there
mm-hmm,
might be something there. Like, because I have like my own opinion of what you said, but maybe that's not what you're saying. What I have in my head, maybe it's not. What do you mean? Like, unpack that a little bit.
right,
What's the
yeah,
difference?
yeah, definitely. So happy, making somebody happy, making your parents happy. That's um, you can go on a basic sense, birthdays, things like that, providing a gift, something that they would like, something that would make them smile. But the reason why I say the happy part is different from being proud, a sense of pride can come even though they might not like what it is that you're doing. They can respect it. It's what's one way I can say that? For example, if you wanted me to, my parents wanted to be, or somebody wanted their kids to be a lawyer, doctor, or engineer, right? And that's what would make them happy. But this person, this individual, went out and made something of themselves, and they didn't go the
Oh,
traditional route, but created a business and started to help out people in their own right. There's a respect that's there. There's pride in the fact that we raised children that have their own mind and feel good enough to go out into the world. It's not what I would have wanted for them. In other words, they're not
oh,
necessarily, they
yeah,
can be happy, but I think there's a difference. There's a difference between the pride part. But I think it's
okay,
better to be understood from the perspective of the child, because that's something that is very tough for them. There's a lot of people that are concerned with making them happy. And when I think about happiness, it's something that's momentary. Like, oh, my mom says I need to call my dad, and now you can live your whole life trying to make them happy, but that's something that's fleeting, right? Whereas the proud aspect of it, if you go and live your life a certain way, you'll know, even if you had never spoken to them, you never know how life plays out, you would know if they're proud of you. It's a strange thing.
okay,
So
yeah,
I don't know. That's definitely something to mull over and think a bit more. But
yeah, that's good. Yeah, but I think the other way I was looking at it's similar. What you said is similar, but
mm-hmm,
I think I have a slight slant where sometimes the child will do something that there's no way the parents could have known to even suggest those things to do, right? For the last say 20 years, there's so many new things that the parent, um, you know what I mean, like a social media manager, right? Like for most parents, they couldn't. There's no way they could say you should go out and try to be a social media manager or
right,
LLM architect because there was just no such thing in their purview at that time. So, but if you were to do that, and then the parent will see the respect that your peers are giving you, then they would be proud. But there's no
right,
way they would be happy. They would still be happy because there's an overlap with those two things, but just try to make the distinction between being proud of your child rather than just be happy that they actually follow exactly what the path that you would like them done.
to to
Right?
take, and the path that, based off of your experience, would lead them to a place where they would be happy, they would be protected, they would have the
Yes.
virtues and the value, the good things of life. But that's kind of that is what we're speaking about here. Whereas, say I was on that journey and I was creating things that, unlike you, who understands all this, the LLM, the modern, the AI, the stuff like this is not the norm, and we tend to forget that, and on different occasions. But my a lot of my friends, people younger than myself as well, going through school, by the time they reach grade 8, they cannot speak to their parents about anything that is going on. Not a single thing, not an app on their phone, not
Oh yeah.
a messaging, even the terminology. It's when
Yes,
Skype
that's
came
true.
out, voice
That's
over
true.
IP, right?
Right.
Even me saying voice over IP to you and you understanding that is so foreign to a lot of people. Even the idea of me saying Skype, which was a lot bigger at that time, people
Yeah.
wouldn't know. And so when you're speaking to generations that don't have that understanding, it becomes very, very difficult. to communicate. So my point with this is, when your kids are facing a world that you have not known, what do you do as a parent in that situation? The fear of the unknown and the fear that they're going to walk into things that you cannot protect them from, that is a native feeling, I would imagine, for parents, but especially so when you're talking about technology, their future, their career, things that they are banking, literally and figuratively, their lives on. How do you support them in that, or do you say, you know what, let's go to something traditional, be a lawyer, forget everything else? And that's where that trust, that protection starts to get blurred. You start to see rifts and children not calling their parents past a certain age once they leave the house because they felt micromanaged, but the parents were just trying to do the best that they could. I heard a saying that said nobody wants you to be better than your mother and your father, if that,
That's right.
right? Like
Yeah,
nobody else in
that's
the
true.
world, and that's
Yeah,
that the. So what
but
do you
but
do with
I
that? Yeah.
well, I think those are the times when you, rather than go for specific things that people should do, you give them more of more or less a mindset. So the tool set, the ability to solve hard problems, the ability to reflect, right? The ability to make plans before you do things, or if you, like I usually say, okay, what does winning looks like? Like before you do anything, if you're going to go into a discussion, or you're going for a job interview, or you have some kind of problem at work or with friends, one of the good things is to say, okay, what is the worst thing that can happen? And if the worst thing were to happen, is it possible for it to be reversed? Right? Because a lot of things are not reversible. A lot of things are reversible, and very few things are irreversible. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people start thinking like most things are irreversible. Therefore, they will not do a lot of different things. Right? So, what I try to do, and I think your mother as well, is try to more or less give mind, like the frame of mind, the tool set. And now I can start using those words like frameworks. Like back then we didn't call it framework, but I usually like, if we're going to, there's an issue at school and we're going to speak to the teachers, will say, okay, what does winning looks like, right? And what
Mm-hmm.
are we willing to give up, and so on. So those are the different frameworks that, if you give those frameworks, um, and the mindset and the tool set, that's better than giving people
Mm-hmm.
specific didactic, like instructional thing, do this, do that, because the environment and the context is always changing. But if you give people the ability, or in this case people means kids, children, focus more on the mindset, tool set. Like for example, let me give you one example, what we're trying to do. When you guys were younger, your mother and I have decided not to link
Mm-hmm.
reading,
You want to
studying
check your
with
your
punishment.
your camera there?
I think, oh, it's about time.
Yeah, just check. Okay, yeah, I think it's good. It's good. You're good.
It's,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. It
So,
was just a moment.
oh, okay, okay. So my point was, sorry about that. Yeah. Um. The yeah. So one good example is, we were trying to get you guys to read and make sure that you're readers and all that stuff. So we try our best not to associate punishment with learning, for example.
Mm.
So we could enforce it and give you a whole set of rules. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. Or we could just kind of link reading and all that stuff with going out with dad or mom. So we used
Right.
to just walk off to the bookstore, for example, right? So we associate that. So the
So you
bottom line
manipulated
is
me.
yeah, manipulate, yeah, ethically, right? So we just got like, so mindset, and now that we know about these like frameworks, the frameworks is just better, because it will, you can adapt different, the same framework for different environments, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to giving this kind of step by step, do this, when the context is changing, it's not going to work. But if you give them a way of seeing the world, solving problem, using statistics, recognizing that most things are reversible. What does winning looks like, and things like that. Those is the closest to perfect strategy you can use, I think, because it's adaptable.
Right. And you
That's
mentioned
it.
the accounting part. Well, I not the accounting, but I remember the accounting. You said school, having to go in the school and speak to the teachers, right? A lot of people when they hear that, they're
Yeah,
thinking you were in trouble, um, you were failing grades, going to go in, and that's, there's that aspect, right, of going in to protect and being present and showing that you are caring parents. In our situation, and I mentioned accounting, a lot of the times when you did go in, it wasn't for myself, Shanti and Kayla, Sash, Chad, so on, KN as well. It wasn't to go in always or most cases because there's a failing grade, which is what most people believe. A lot of the time, it was to make sure that we understood or we were not capped. So one of the things that happens in a
yeah,
lot
I
of these
remember.
the school system is that they allow you to believe or they lead you to believe that getting a 65, 75 is great work. How do I know this? How
Yeah,
do you justify that? You'll see that they'll start putting stars and stickers and great work in big bold letters,
yeah,
when in actuality you've missed out a quarter of the subject matter. You have not been able to
yeah,
successfully understand or communicate that you understand on these tests, let alone on like a
exactly.
midterm or final grade. And so what this does subconsciously to the children is it makes them believe that, oh, this is the capacity, this was great work, and all of a sudden now you let your guard down and you feel that you don't need to look about learning that remaining 20 to 25%. The problem with
Okay.
that is that over time, especially when you go through the
Accumulate.
grades, it accumulates, it starts
Yeah,
to compound, but compound
yeah,
negatively, where you're
yeah,
missing that out. And so, even in classes where we would get 80% and so forth, you would make it a point, mom would make it a point to go in as a united front and and confront that idea, confront the idea that
yeah,
somehow just getting an 80,
yeah,
even though that's considered an A minus, is something that um,
yeah,
that's the end all be all. But the real benefit was not to actually have the grade changed. The benefit was
yeah,
to change the perspective of one, the teacher, but two, have myself and my siblings see that, you know what, I'm made for more. You were
yeah,
manipulated, as we said, right? You were manipulated
yeah,
to know that you
yeah.
could do better, right? And that's
Right.
not your reality. Your reality, there's other people in the class. And I remember specifically you asking, is there anybody in the class? And there's like Mr. Clark to you, Mr. Clark. It's a really good grade. 78. It's a
Yeah,
tough class and things like that. And you would,
yeah,
with the terminologies, the words. Is there anybody in your class that's getting a 90? Yes, there's that, but it's not. But no, no, no. So it's possible, right? And
yeah.
so
What are they doing different? Yeah, I remember.
right. So that changed.
Yeah,
That changed a lot. So that's where you talk about, and I say this, protection, right? To bring it back to how do you let your kids become their own person over time, trust versus protection. At that point in
yeah,
time, I'm not equipped with the ability to see the structural impact, to see how this gets compounded over time. That's where the protection comes in. And protection, here's the other
yeah,
thing I want to say in this conversation, and I'm speaking a lot for the men. A lot of the men out there, especially 20s, 30s, we believe that protection is a physical thing. A lot of the protection that has to go on, especially as we move forward in this digital and this AI infrastructure, is going to be mental, it's going to be intellectual. It has always been that, but more so than ever, we have to look about learning the skills to be able to do that. This is what I feel like you guys, mom and dad particularly, have done. But as we move forward, this is a point I'm trying to get to. That's the protection because I wasn't aware of these things. Now I'm older. Now, for you to provide that same level of protection, is that counterintuitive? Does that show that all the stuff that you have done for me, mom has done for me, does that show a lack of trust to me, right? Because at a certain point in time, I know there's this topic of
interesting.
your kids should, should your kids stay at home until, late 20s? Should you kick them out as soon as 18, 22? I don't want to get into necessarily the extreme of being kicked out and all this stuff, but I do want to make a point here, and that is to say there's something to be said that if your parents are healthy and have put time and invested into you and your future and to encourage you to leave the nest, I actually think that's a showing of trust in you versus them saying that you're allowed just to stay at home the entire time into your late 20s and 30s. I think the real trust is to say, look, you're equipped, you have what it takes, go out there and make something of yourself. But where does that line come where you're trusting them versus putting them in harm's way? And obviously, you don't want them to go through.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so it's a
yeah.
slippery slope.
Yeah, it is. That I think you can always revert to the this idea of the frameworks. Know that we have a better some because sometimes we just can't find the right word to or the right term to reason about things that we already know intuitively. So most people already know. Like if you're in Jamaica, you would listen to old people used to say. Those are frameworks. We just didn't call them frameworks, right? I think that
Mm-hmm.
just to answer your question, like how do you know when to kind of, but it's never going to be this or that. I think there's going to be like some kind of gradation. It's going to be a degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
It will never be. It's not binary. Like either you're either this, you're either doing it or you're not doing it. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
be a situation where sometimes you're not going to stop your mother from saying certain things or your father if you're going off in an area that they think is really right or wrong, right? Their own, let's say they're using their own measurement, their own metric. So there's going to be a some kind of a gradation, some kind of degree of whether or not you're doing that and how often you're doing it, and know when you're doing it. And the younger person said, okay, you kind of overstepping your bound, know when to step back and say, okay, um, you're right, but I'm just telling you what I think. I think it come down to um, degrees. It will never be this is when you know you're doing it, and therefore this is on the other side you're not doing it. I think it's always going to be this gray area where you're going back and forth, and um, it's like a set of trade offs as opposed to a set of things. It's more like trade off. Either you do this and risk your son or your daughter don't call you, or you back off a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
right, and find better ways to
So
do it,
what would you
right?
prefer, right? Or what did you choose? Because in it is a trade off, right? It's do you want to be closer with your kids at a younger age, right? The uh, I guess the metaphor of I'm not your friend, right? Are you don't be your kid's friend, don't be your child's friend, right? Um, and then I heard something else that if you don't discipline your kids, then discipline your kids before the police have to. But that was something else.
That's funny.
But
That's
the
funny.
my point is how much of what it is that you have to do as a parent to somebody to a child meaning under 18, um, to steer them in the right direction, even if it means that you guys aren't as close or they don't quite understand. Like how much pressure is that on a parent to do right by what they believe to be right by their kids at a younger age, knowing that it might sever them, but it might be the best thing for them. And it may take, the kid might go into their own in their early 20s, and they might come around to it, in their mid 20s or 30s, or they might never come around to it. But you know that you did the best thing by them. That's a very hard thing, I think,
Yeah.
for a lot of parents to reconcile with. I know for myself that a lot of the things that I've seen you institute from the books, the Rich Dad Poor Dads, and all the books that you had. I didn't quite see the vision, but as I started to grow into my own as a man, I started to see, oh, okay, I see this piece. I see what this was about. And even in my own relationship, I found myself, okay, let's create our vision board. Let's talk about this. Okay, let's move here. Let's go here. Get there before. And the more I started to do that, uh, I had these flashbacks to when you were doing it, having those conversations with me, almost the same exact mannerisms. So I started to piece together, oh, this is what you were doing. This is what the plan was. This is where you were going with it. So from that, you know, at least as far as you and I's dynamic, because I know the audience wants to, they want to know in general, but they also want to see our perspective on it. For us, that's when I started to see, okay, you know what you're talking about. But what I also took from that is, as you were saying at the beginning of this conversation, not every experience that I'm going through is a unique experience to me. A lot of these experiences have already happened in previous decades. You start to see things are cyclical, right? And
Exactly.
I remember the pin drop, when pin drop came around, when jerking was a dance, 2010s, 2010, 2011. And then you did the pin drop. I said, what? How did you know about the pin drop? And he said,
Say,
and
what
that,
is the
yeah.
parental?
And if you remember, that's when you put your foot around your knee and then you drop and then you
Yeah,
get back up. So I'm
yeah, I
like,
remember.
and then you get into your own, and now they're starting to bring back things. So yeah, so it's,
Well, let me chime in
yeah.
because before I forget, remember I'm almost 60, so
Mm-hmm.
I have to make sure I get in. So I think some of the things that you're saying, it's I have to be careful that I'm not remembering from the last time we have a discussion and then believe it's a memory from back then,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, but I think it is. One of the things I believe I was doing, I like to say we were doing, because your mother and I, we sat down and decided, okay, we're going to try to make sure that they live a different set of lives than, right? Like, and try to navigate that, right? Through racism and all that other good thing that you have to get go through in North America sometimes. So a lot of the things I was doing though, I was expecting to be for you to pick for all six of you to pick these things up through osmosis, right? Some of the things it wasn't instructional, like do this. Like for example, let me give an example. I remember in the basement, I set up all the library in the basement, and I have my computer in the basement, and right, and back then I was coding, or I'm doing graphic design and all that stuff. But when Shantae and Kayla or you or even Samantha and all them would come down and start talking, I would say shh, right? Like
I remember
you're in the library,
that,
right? So all of a sudden, even Shantae and Kayla, even when Kayla didn't would turn the book upside down and say, shh, she's reading like at a very young age because the environment was smart, right? Because I believe that the environment is very, very powerful. So there's a lot of things we try to do that was more environmental. So you can pick these stuff up through osmosis, like just by because it's happening, right? Because remember when you were living in one time and was saying, okay, I'm gonna make some phone calls right now and watch the phone ring because I'm gonna call some customers, I'm gonna call some of my clients and try to activate them, and I'm gonna right. Those are that's instructional, but there's other things that I was trying to do, so you just see that that's how we do things. For example, most of the time there was no soda, right? Um, processed food. It was just vegetable on the table, and we're eating. Ah, this is so good. And then you guys just get used to eating. So even when you go to your aunt's house and there's other food there, it's like it's so different because
mm-hmm.
it's. I think people learn. So most of the stuff it wasn't instructional that you're even. Some of the stuff that you're even mentioning, is not instructional. I remember one time I was sitting down with you on the step and I'm going through maybe math or something like that, but just through a conversation. We're talking about physics or whatever. We're
Right.
just talking, right? And Chad walked in and said, "It's your turn." He's talking to you, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
saying, "It's your turn." But at no time we
My
mentioned
older
that this is
brother.
going to be physics. Yeah, oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's our brother. No time we mentioned that come let's do physics or let's talk about biology. It was just a conversation, so you can learn through just conversation through osmosis. Right? So I think those are some of the techniques that we institute in. For example, last one. One of the things that we did was I recognize that when I came to North America, I heard most of the people on the news and the so-called educated people. I've noticed that they're using the same words. The so-called educated always use the same words, the SAT words. So I went out. I said, okay, where they're using exactly the same words all the time. I could see the pattern. So what we did was we went out and we started playing Scrabble. And rather than use just the dictionary, would use Word Smart. Remember that book?
Yep.
Word Smart. So we'll use Word Smart and I will challenge every single time it's there and say, look it up. No, it's a word. I said, no, 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 look it up. Right? I don't think it's a word. Right? And you guys have to look it up. And that's where you kind of just learn some really good words or you
Mm-hmm.
increase your vocabulary by just
Equivocate.
osmosis.
Equivocate was one of those words that was in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
word smart.
yeah, yeah. Right, right. And then I noticed that those are the words that like so-called people in the Western world use all the time. So therefore, if you my aim at the time was if my kids understand those words, then it's going to be better for them if they're talking to educated, so-called educated people. I said so-called because a lot of those people aren't educated in the sense of education, like
Mm-hmm.
educate, like from inside out. They're more outside in,
All right.
right?
Edicure too. Yeah, the within. No, I'm with it. So we're trying something. So I think this was a good one. I think this is
Yeah, I
something we
think
can
so.
definitely go deeper into. But one thing we want to do with these episodes, and again, this is still part of the process, right? This is still part of the whole process here. What we're shifting gears on in this conversation is to, um, in the previous one, we had 5 segments in one where you're able to watch it and break it down that way. We had broken it down into different segments. We'll be able to update you guys on what that process looks like here. That I'll give you the last word in a sec, but I'm just kind of looking to
Yeah,
close this out here. But my last thoughts when it comes to the topic of today again, how do you let your kids become their own person over time? The answer seems, and you tell me if I'm getting it right, uh, it's never really black or white. It's a gradient, right? It's never all or nothing. But one of the things that we know that has helped over time, whether we recognize it or not, is the traditional wisdom. And one of the ways that we can say that in a more uh, concrete sense is through frameworks. Frameworks
yeah,
is the thing that when you're looking to pass things down, it's really the frameworks that we're looking for. And a lot of the times, if you don't have it in such a concrete way, um, that's where the metaphors, that's where the sayings from your great grandmother used to say,
yeah,
uh, you
yeah,
know, one of the
yeah.
Jamaican ones, my grandmother used to say, if you don't listen, you will feel, right? So if you
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
listen, you will feel,
yeah.
right?
And I listen, boy, I feel. Yeah,
Yeah. So now those are part of the frameworks that get passed down, and that's one of the things that I've taken away from this conversation. That it's not this easy thing, but at the same time, these are the conversations that my father and I, my dad and I just had. We encourage you as well to have those conversations with not only your dad or your grandfather or parents, um, but maybe you have a cousin that you're close with or somebody else that you consider to be family. Go ahead and have that conversation as well. So that's what I'm taking away from today's episode.
yeah.
You guys let us know what you take away from this episode as well, and if you have any other topics that are willing to
And
discuss.
let us know where. And sorry, I cut you.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. But and let us know where we can improve. And in I want to say just to expand on what you were saying about frameworks. Frameworks in the era of AI, I think it's even more important now because the only unique selling proposition, your only edge right now, since everybody has access to the same artificial intelligence, like the the bigger models like say ChatGPT or Claude, what's going to make you stand out is frameworks. So if you, right, because it's so much easier to get lost in the weeds these days where everybody's
Mm-hmm.
asking questions. If you go from the perspective of a framework, yeah, you're going to be in the one of those people who are winning. So I think it even extend beyond just family relationship or family dynamics and go off into jobs or job situation and just career advancement and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I would double down on what you were saying. Frameworks is the way because it kind of
Mm-hmm.
gives you a better
And yeah.
way to move forward.
And when in
Yep.
doubt, always ask yourself, what does winning look like? This has been the Generation Gap podcast with Roydell and Roydell. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Yep. Have a good day.